A Federal Hill couple is recovering after police say they were assaulted by a group of juveniles.
Investigators say one juvenile was armed with a 2x4 with nails.
Hi, Mary. Baltimore police confirm no arrests have been made in this case. We did obtain the 911 dispatch audio, which indicates one of these suspects may have been as young as 8 years old. Take a listen.
The Tesco Street. Female on open line states that a large group vandalized her home, then attacked her. Weapon involved 2x4 with nails, bricks.
5 to 6 number one males. One of them very young, possibly 8 years old, in a blue hoodie. And we're going to have a number 2 male with it's going to be minor puncture wounds to his torso.
Imagine for a moment that there was a neighborhood in a United States city that was 87% black. Now, this neighborhood was known for actually having very low crime compared to the surrounding city. However, there seems to be a series of incidents, a lot of them, but not all of them, involving juveniles that happen to be white, coming into the area and just committing disgusting acts of violence against the people who lived in this particular area, to the point where they feel like they need to be driven away. Again, even though they represent the majority of the population of this particular area, even though they've built a community over the course of generations, even though compared to the rest of the city, when you look at the different buildings in this particular neighborhood, they look absolutely fantastic, they've decided that they need to pack up and leave, and this is a growing sentiment due to the fact that the youths, a minority of youths in this hypothetical white youths, are coming in and attacking them, throwing rocks, hitting them with 2x4s, and causing all sorts of chaos. Well, unfortunately, this is the reality for the Federal Hill neighborhood of Baltimore. However, the races are reversed from how I presented it in the open. This is an area that is 87% white, and for whatever reason, even though this is traditionally a safer area of Baltimore, in that they don't have a lot of homicides in this particular neighborhood, it turns out there is an uptick in juvenile crime, people coming in and trashing the place. And one of the notable incidents that caught my attention from this week was an incident involving youths that were throwing rocks at a couple and ended up striking a couple with a 2x4 that had nails in it, in a senseless crime that again is becoming all more common in the Federal Hill neighborhood of Baltimore. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Now, I spoke with that male victim off camera. He didn't want to talk, but Baltimore police confirmed the attack happened outside their home here on Patapsco Street near South Charles Street in the early evening back on Sunday, May 11th. Investigators say the juveniles used their hands, rocks, and a 2x4 with nails sticking out of it during this assault. The nails were told caused puncture wounds to the male victim. Both refused medical treatment. Now, you may recall just last week we showed you this line of cars with shattered windshields, also in Federal Hill. Neighbors say juveniles were to blame, as well as for an assault on a woman near Rashfield. We're told young people dumped dirty water on her head. A community leader then said he's voiced his concerns with city and state leaders and agencies, but the cases continue, and he believes it's time for a national platform.
The police are doing everything that they can. I know that they are doing an exceptional job with technology, tracking down these individuals, identifying them, getting warrants, arresting them. But then when it goes to the next phase of the accountability part, DJS just lets them go, and they're back here on the street. I've spoken to every elected leader. I think the only way that something is going to change now is if it becomes a national issue and if the national media put it on TV.
Now look, the reason I presented this hypothetical to you guys in the beginning of this video in the way that I did is because obviously had this been an issue of 87% of this neighborhood being a black neighborhood, it being a peaceful neighborhood where not a lot of crime goes down, however the youth from a neighboring white area ends up coming in and tearing up the joint, attacking people at random, people would infer that there was some kind of racial motivation. If you heard from a bunch of different residents in this neighborhood about how they don't feel safe where they grew up, where their community is, and now they're considering leaving.
This is becoming really dangerous, and you don't want to be walking around the streets. It's scary.
For Boyd, as the crimes continue coming in, her family is now considering moving out.
We love our community and we don't want to leave, but when this type of thing happens, it's almost as if you have to, and I don't want to be at that point.
This would be reported by the national media as these people being driven out by the evil white racist youths that don't respect the peaceful black people. However, race is not even mentioned throughout the course of this segment, and I've gone down the rabbit hole on this Federal Hill area, and one of the things that I discovered is that they will wait to have a homicide as compared to the rest of Baltimore until like 6 or 7 months throughout the course of the year, because traditionally, this is a safe enclave. This is a separate area from Baltimore proper, even though it's in the city, due to the fact that the population just doesn't act in the way that they do in the rest of Baltimore. However, we do have an uptick in black youths robbing the place, tearing it up.
BPD confirming in the last 2 weeks, they've received 5 reports of men on bikes smashing car windows with golf clubs. So far, no arrests made, but the department acknowledging detectives are investigating if these cases are connected or committed by the same people. Back on Riverside Avenue, just a few blocks up from the damaged cars, more shattered glass outside a neighborhood pub, a window pane missing in the outpost front door, right next to the lock.
And to be clear, it really does need to be emphasized that it's less about the robbery, the crimes of poverty that we hear about from the left, and more about causing terror and having fun than anything else in this particular area. And it's sad to see all these people just getting ready to leave the city of Baltimore based on the fact that their neighborhood is no longer safe. But make no mistake about it, it's definitely a good idea for them to get gone. Now, we're going to pivot to prior to this, which is mentioned in the local news segment that I highlighted about the rocks and the 2x4 attack, to tell you about another attack where a man was robbed for his pizza, and during the course of the robbery, he was struck over the head and he was nearly blinded. Again, all for a pizza.
We are hearing from a man who may lose his sight in one eye after a violent attack in Federal Hill over the weekend. The victim believes the suspects are juveniles. One of them beat him with a metal pole and took off with his pizza.
The victim had picked up a pizza at Ann Pizza just up the street. He was walking home when the suspects approached him. They took his pizza but didn't take anything else, left him with his phone and his wallet. But they hit him with that metal pole, and it caused him to have a hole in his retina, a torn iris, and a fractured nose.
I'm sure people would see this and say, just leave. And maybe that's what we do.
Scarred with a gash on his face, John Berardi may move out of the Federal Hill neighborhood he loves. He no longer feels safe after 3 suspects attacked him just after 11 Saturday night as he walked home with a pizza.
Look, it's incredibly sad to hear that people don't feel safe in the neighborhood that they grew up in, that they want to stay in, that they enjoy otherwise, based on the fact that they've been victimized by criminals. But you should get gone from the city of Baltimore, because even if you're in a nice enclave, guess what? This story is proof positive that you are not safe in this particular city. One of the things that annoyed me about the previous local news segment is that they actually approached somebody who had surveillance video of a break-in that happened at his property. However, the people in this area are so left-wing, they've been so trained to just tolerate criminality that they have a policy of not releasing the surveillance video, even though, again, the people who broke in were armed, were dangerous, and likely, because they haven't been caught, have been repeat offending, and maybe, just maybe, were the suspects that attacked this individual right here.
And just down the street, a break-in reported at Pure Raw around 3 a.m. Wood from the doorframe splintered from the forced entry. Off camera, the juice bar's manager telling Fox 45 it's company policy not to release surveillance video publicly, but he did show us the footage privately.
Now, in the video that I was shown, this camera captured what appears to be 3 young men dressed in all black and wearing ski masks kicking in the front door. One of them holding a hammer, another holding a gun. And it's unfortunately not the first time this has happened.
But this story, even the way that it's presented at this moment in time, is a little bit off. Even the setup, the prelude that I gave you guys about this man being struck during the course of a robbery for his pizza was not entirely accurate, because when you watch the surveillance video, what you ultimately end up discovering is that they struck him afterwards. They hit him over the head with a pole for fun after he already surrendered the pizza.
The assault was captured on surveillance video WJZ obtained. The suspects follow Berardi, then grab his pizza. As he walks away, one of them hits him with a metal pole.
I heard them again behind me, now this time demanding that I give them the pizza, threatening me with whatever they had. And I was like, all right, cool, everyone calm down. Just take the pizza, it's not a big deal. And I was just turning to walk away. And as I was turning to walk away, one of them just swung and hit me in the face with a metal pole.
So look, I had to freeze frame the video right there, obviously because of YouTube's terms of service, but as you can see, he surrenders the pizza to these criminals. By the way, they are described as juvenile offenders. He doesn't want an altercation. He doesn't want to fight. He turns to walk away, and then he gets struck anyway. So he was not attacked during the course of a robbery. The robbery actually occurred. The mugging happened. And for fun, these youths decided it would be a good idea to crack him over the head, blinding him, tearing a hole in his retina. Again, just for the fun of it, just for the enjoyment. Had we seen a crime like this happen, again, in the hypothetical situation that I presented to you in the beginning of this segment, this would, of course, be national news. This would be described as evil white racism. This would be described as cruelty, when in reality, this is just another aspect of the knockout game. And I know these people stole the pizza, so maybe they're just starving, maybe they're just hungry, but I have a different theory, that these people aren't innocent Baba Angel Aladdins who didn't do nothing wrong, who are just trying to feed their starving family. They're people who go out and they want to target those that they see as weak, and guess what? Time and time again, they happen to see white individuals as weak, so they're attacking them. So while this might not be a hate crime in terms of motivation, it might not be due directly to the fact that they hate white people. There's a reason they chose this neighborhood. There's a reason that they keep choosing this neighborhood, and there's a reason they decided, even though this guy surrendered the pizza, and by the way, he had his phone, his wallet, all that stuff that they didn't take, that they wanted to crack him over the head. They enjoyed it. They had fun. I'm sure if you found a written account of this particular story, they were laughing after they did this, and one of the reasons why is because it's called the knockout game, because to the perpetrators, they play it for fun. This was done for enjoyment, and again, this is a good reason to move out of your neighborhood. Look at this man's face. Look at what he has been through as a consequence of just trying to get a pizza in what is a comparatively safe area of Baltimore on a Saturday night.
Video captured moments later shows what he believes are the suspects, one swinging that metal pole, another with a broom, walking casually down a nearby alley.
A little bit of state of shock, definitely bleeding bad. I couldn't see it in my eye, didn't know what was going on. Luckily, the house opened up, a bunch of people came out, and they were probably looking to go out that night, and they saw me. I just asked them for help.
So we're told by the local news that this is surveillance video of who are believed to be the suspects based on the fact that they match the outfits of the suspects in the previous video. And I think it is quite notable that they're not even holding the pizza box that they took from him at this moment in time. Now, they could have eaten it because they are starving, according to our left-wing progressives, but in reality, it is very likely they just flung the pizza aside. They didn't even want it at all. They liked inflicting the pain, and one of the indications of that is the fact that one of these youths, one of these teenagers, one of these teens is recreating the swing, and they appear to be having a good time, enjoying themselves. Again, it was about inflicting pain on this person, and in that goal, they 100% achieved it.
Berardi says it took another 45 minutes for police to respond.
And then something terrible like this happens, and you realize, cops don't come for 45 minutes. They're never going to catch these people, and if they do, they'll just be back on the street. And then you're just stuck with a medical bill and loss of eyesight, Mm-hmm. And for what? And what's where's justice?
It was completely shocking and didn't feel real at all. I could not believe it. It was completely jarring and just terrifying.
Now look, I'm not shocked at all by the way that these people are being presented to the local news media, where essentially they're revealing that they're totally ignorant about the city that surrounds them. And again, that is a consequence of the fact that they live in a relatively safe enclave in the city of Baltimore, and they can't imagine this. And in addition to that, the local news media is not really highlighting that this happens, that these kind of attacks are not all that rare, and honestly, that they are done for fun. This is almost never reported. In fact, I get pushback on my channel when I point this out, even though there are decades of documented cases of these kind of vicious attacks where the suspects didn't have a motivation at all. They just did it for fun. Again, it's called the knockout game because it's played for fun, for entertainment. But this is a textbook case of that, where this guy was injured totally unnecessarily. He already surrendered. He was walking away. And what ultimately ended up happening when when he tried to comply with the criminals is that he ended up losing his eyesight. And the 45-minute response time, crazy, insane, just another indication that they won't catch these suspects. They will offend again. And again, when they don't actually get what they want, when they try to rob somebody as a pretext, as an attack, the beating is going to be more vicious. Those people are going to get hurt significantly more than this guy, and his injuries are already incredibly serious. And yes, for the love of God, me to you, actual justice warrior to you guy out there and your girlfriend, leave. Get out of this area. Move to a better place. Move away from Baltimore.
Police confirmed Berardi's account of what happened. They could not say whether the suspects are juveniles. They have not made any arrests.
They kind of explained, how they're reactionary, how they're spending a lot of their time catching these kids that are doing these things, and they're just getting released the same day back to their parents, and nothing's changing.
So the local news media tells us something that's completely stupid, which is the police confirm this incident actually occurred, which again, the surveillance video confirms this incident occurred. But of course, there were no arrests made at that time, despite the fact that you have a bunch of surveillance cameras all over the place documenting this particular incident. Now, I also would like to point out that there are local news segments throughout Federal Hill talking about how they're going to fight this youth crime by putting up surveillance cameras, but in reality, surveillance cameras don't prevent criminality, and a 45-minute response time for an area that is often afflicted with this type of criminality is not going to be a solution. And again, the sentiment of these people wanting to move out has been expressed across a bunch of these local news segments, despite the fact that the people that they know within the community appear to be good people. Now, of course, we have other stories about crime in the city of Baltimore in this Federal Hill area, and wouldn't you know it, another instance that we're talking about involves a white individual.
We're continuing to demand answers from city leaders after a shooting in Federal Hill leaves a Pasadena teenager paralyzed and on life support.
It is the most heart-wrenching thing. I wish that was never brought onto me to have to listen to. No mother should have to not only listen to the gunshots, but my daughter screaming for her sister.
A girl called Cameron Holt, who was murdered when there was a shootout that she unfortunately was caught in the middle of, even though police said that she had nothing to do with either party exchanging gunfire. She was actually home, I believe from university in California, visiting, ended up getting back into her car, and she was struck by a bullet and paralyzed by that bullet, and ultimately, a couple of weeks later, she ended up dying.
Cameron's case has now been upgraded to a homicide. Baltimore police are remaining tight-lipped about where the investigation stands. Detectives have interviewed witnesses, collected video footage, and any ballistic evidence found at the scene. Surveillance video we obtained captured about a dozen gunshots. One of those bullets struck Cameron's spine as she sat in her car with her sister and a girlfriend stopped on West Hamburg Street. A witness reported seeing two men arguing just before the shooting.
His friend tried to calm him down and took him for a walk. Well, that didn't matter, because when he came back, he walked by me and he had an AR on him. And then the other guys opened fire on him when he opened fire on them.
Baltimore police confirm a 28-year-old man was also shot. So far, no arrests have been made.
So this man right here claims that he was a witness to the initial argument that ended up leading to this shooting. And according to him, somebody tried to separate the people that were getting into the argument. However, one of the suspects ended up leaving only to return with an AR-style rifle and then open fire. And then, of course, there was a response fire. And this is what ultimately ended up killing Cameron. Now, all of this is in the context of a local news segment where Cameron's mother ends up praising her daughter's big heart because she listed herself as an organ donor, and somebody else is going to get her heart and liver and other organs. But make no mistake about it, there is nothing wonderful about this story. Maybe there's a wonderful consequence for somebody who's on the receiving end of this organ, because in reality, this was a life that was cut down way too short in front of close members of her family and friends. And by the way, this surveillance video that I'm going to play for you doesn't have any of the shooting in terms of visual representation, but you can hear the shots and you can also hear the reaction from the sister in the moment. And I think it's important for you guys to understand the consequences of letting these criminals run wild.
Surveillance video capturing the nearly 24 gunshots fired, followed by blood-curdling screams Spaeth says is coming from Cameron's sister after realizing she had been shot.
She says,
I can't imagine the horror of having your sister visit you, come back from California, be sitting in a car, and then all of a sudden she is shot and she's in such a bad state that she can't move. And of course, low response times, all these other problems that go on in the city of Baltimore in this area. And you're just left to wonder if you're going to lose your relative. And unfortunately, 2 weeks after the shooting, she ended up passing away because they basically couldn't do anything for her. Now, there were arrests made in this particular case. Here are the suspects.
Informing the Pasadena mother, investigators had arrested 3 men for the murder of her daughter, 19-year-old Cameron Holt. The suspects identified by police as 28-year-old Devontae Richardson, 20-year-old Alexis Cancel Soto, and 27-year-old Deshaun Clark. The mother today placing a name and face with the accused.
And they are 27-year-old Deshaun Clark of Severn, Maryland, 28-year-old Devontae Richardson of Hanover, Maryland, and 20-year-old Alexis Cancel Soto of Baltimore. Now, each of them are charged with murder. The case is currently in progress, but I'm sure if you looked into the background of these 3 individuals, you'd find out that the reason they were in that neighborhood is because they were getting off their residency requirements at Johns Hopkins Hospital, because of course, these are the future curers of cancer, our future leaders in the city of Baltimore, and not people who are obviously outsiders from this neighborhood coming in and terrorizing the place just because they can't control their behavior, and they have a long history of criminal issues that, of course, would have predicted this type of behavior going forward. But yeah, this is what is going on in the Federal Hill neighborhood of Baltimore. And even though traditionally it is considered, based on multiple media reports, to be a safer neighborhood of Baltimore, in reality, you gotta get out of there. You gotta move. The idea that your community is gonna hold it together is just not the case. Again, 45-minute response times basically means you're totally screwed if this kind of criminality happens, and you're seeing it from repeat offenders to juvenile offenders. People are coming in here, targeting you, and even when they're not targeting you, the regular, ordinary, non-criminal residents happen to be afflicted. So it's sad to see, but the facts are what they are. It's time to go, because Baltimore, even with Ivan Bates improving the homicide rate by actually prosecuting repeat offenders, it's not going to get significantly better anytime soon. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the crime problem in the Federal Hill area of Baltimore. Till next time.